Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 Shruti Sharma.
Hi, this is Krishnan. Today I'll be doing the Hindu news analysis. These are the 5 articles that we're going to discuss today. So let us directly go into the topic. So the first topic for the day will be Odisha being the prime mover on the PVTG development mission. So what is the PVTG development mission? So the finance minister recently she has come up with Pradhan Mantri particularly vulnerable tribal groups development mission. So what they are going to do in that mission? Basically they are going to come up with something called basic facilities. What are the basic facilities? Health, education, roads, infrastructure and things like that. So with regard to the scheme, whatever basically these schemes target these basic facilities. So the scheme is going to target only these areas. But what we should know here is why Odisha may prove to be the first mover, because already they have a lot of experience. So 13 of the 75 PVTGs, that is highest number of PVTGs are in Odisha only, right? I hope you know that. They might ask that in a prelims question. So past 40 years they have a lot of experiences in micro level project managements and things like that, to address basically if there are any gaps, if there are places that you cannot reach, or some tribals may not be willing to want the benefits of the schemes, they'll be reluctant. So to convince them, for that all the infrastructures it is there in Odisha. So they are going to experiment first. They'll do it in Odisha only, so that they'll know how beneficial the scheme is. See, 2.5 lakh persons belonging to the particular vulnerable tribal groups are in Odisha. So that you should know. So already they have done something called as CCD scheme, which is the conservation cum development scheme, which is going on in Odisha already, wherein the central government gives 100% assistance to the state government. So because of all these experiences, they have a lot of tribal experts who can make sure the benefits reach the tribals and things like that. So they are telling Odisha will be the first mover to start this program. So and the next thing is what has done in there's something called as Odisha PVTG Empowerment and Livelihood Improvements Program. In that what they have done, they have so far spent 711 crores. International 46% from International Fund for Agriculture they have got, and with that they have intervened in 52 areas. So these things they have done. Next is what you should know about PVTG landscape in Odisha is, we have these, I mean in the exam they might not ask, but just go through this. These are the PVTG groups in Odisha. But the main issues you should know, how do you classify a PVTG? We have discussed this already. Stagnant and diminishing population, subsistence level of economy, agricultural, pre-agricultural stages of hunting, food gathering and shifting cultivation, and relative physical isolation. So these are the 5 ways through which you find PVTGs. So and these are the festivals of tribal people. Chaitra Parva, which is celebrated by the Hinduized tribals, Bhuyan. So some tribals are Hinduized, some tribals are Christianized, right? So Chaitra Parva is celebrated by Bhuyans. Bonda celebrate these festivals. You should know these festivals also. And this tribe is a very important tribe, Mankiria tribe. They keep appearing in the news very often because of they live in Simlipal Tiger Reserve, and there is constantly conflict between. I mean that is what people say, that there is conflict between tigers and the people there. So they make rope with CL fibers, so which you will get in Simlipal Tiger Reserve. So this is what you should know about Odisha, PVTG and the scheme that is going to come. So with this we'll move on to the next article. So the next article for the day is about Domestic Violence Act. So what has happened is, recently a man, he had accused his wife of adultery, but surprisingly he had gone to the court under the Domestic Violence Act. So what Delhi High Court has said that this Domestic Violence Act is not available to male members of the family, especially the husband. So as you know, the law itself is called Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act, right? So I don't know why this person did that. In fact, he even had a lawyer, so she only represented him in the court. So he had gone to the court. He had accused his wife of adultery, but the complaint was filed under Domestic Violence Act. But the Delhi High Court has said you cannot seek recourse under the Domestic Violence Act, and the Domestic Violence Act, it is not it is not gender neutral. It is only for women, like that. The Delhi High Court has said. So what happened in the case so far? The local court, before it went to the Delhi High Court, it had summoned the wife under the Domestic Violence Act. So the wife, she appealed in the High Court. So what the local court had done is the local court had sought precedence from the Karnataka High Court, which held that the male member can appeal to the court using the Domestic Violence Act. But what happened is later the Karnataka High Court, it said it did that, it gave the judgment due to an error, and it is not and the judgment is null and void, and a man cannot seek redressal under Domestic Violence Act. So like that, the Karnataka High Court government has said, but in spite of that, this person has gone to the Delhi High Court claiming he wants redressal from his wife through Domestic Violence Act. So as you can see here, the act itself is named as Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, right? So this might actually come as prelims questions because generally you have questions like this. If you have understood the nuances of act or not, like that, to test, they'll ask you these small questions from this act. So what you do is about the act. So the act is called Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act. Who are covered under this act? All women, mother, sister, wife, widow, or partners living in a shared household. Recently even there was a judgment which said even people living in live-in relationship, the girlfriend or the partner, even she is covered under this act. So what is the relationship? It might be marriage, live-in, or adoption. So, and what is the most important thing that you should know? No male relative. So no male, no husband, or the female relative of the husband. So anybody related to the man cannot file a complaint against the wife or the female partner. So this is the most important part. This might question in prelims. They might ask this as an option. So who can file a complaint? Women and children. Women, the mother, she can complain on behalf of minor children. So it only safeguards children and women. So against whom the complaint can be made? Against male partner, male or female relatives of the male partner. So what are the reliefs available? Protection order for protection of women, that is the man can be arrested. It will be ensured that he is not harming the person again, and monetary relief. So what you should know, why I took this article is because they might ask if a man can be, as in a man can file a case under Domestic Violence Act against women. Like that, there might be a prelims question. So that is why I put this here. So what are the other recourses? They can get custody order. I mean, the women can get the custody of the child. If there are any injuries, you will get compensation, divorce proceedings. So these are the famous cases under the law. So Shalu Bansal case, separate residence was provided, and Sureka Mote case. So what they are telling, that directly district magistrate can hear the case because this is relating to life, right? So these are benchmark cases. So these are the things you should know. Let us move on to the next article. This article is about how the government, especially the finance ministry, should maneuver between capital expenditure and fiscal prudence. So this is what I have mentioned here. So it is the government faces a very delicate balancing act, right? On the one hand, it has expenditure priorities, and on the other hand, there should be fiscal prudence, right? Why there should be fiscal prudence? Fiscal prudence only shows your ability to repay your debt. So there are a lot of credit rating agencies, right? So they'll keep monitoring it. If your fiscal prudence is not good, they'll downgrade, and you'll not be able to borrow, and investors will not have confidence or faith in the country's government. So that is why there should be a balancing between expenditure priorities and fiscal prudence. So this is what this article is about. So here the author gives 5 areas where the government should focus on. So on one hand, it should prioritize spending. On the other hand, fiscal prudence is also important. So the author talks about 5 areas where it can do it very prudently. So in the first instance, he talks about fiscal consolidation. So the author is telling the government has done well, because earlier it was 6.5. Now it has come down to 5.9. This is good, right? If there is fiscal deficit, if it is coming down, it is good. So investor confidence will improve. Next is also a good thing. Right now the fiscal deficit is 17.8 8 lakh crore, right? How they are going to finance it? They are going to finance it using short-term borrowings and the National Social Security Fund. So short-term borrowing and the National Social Security Fund. What this will do is already there is a liquidity crunch in the banking system, right? So if they are going to do this using short-term borrowings and National Security Fund, banks will not be much affected. So the economy will be in a good shape. Next is infrastructure and capital expenditure. So first the author has talked about fiscal deficit. Next is going to talk about infrastructure and capital expenditure. Why is infrastructure and capital expenditure important? We have seen that already, only because only they will create employment. They will only lead to job creation. Because of them only investment will be there in the country. So that is very, very important. So what has happened this budget is capital expenditure has been increased to 10 lakh crore, which will be 3.3% of the GDP as against 2.7% last year. So here also the government has done a good job. So they have maintained the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit has come down. At the same time, what they are doing, capital expenditure they have increased. So this is a good thing, right? Because on the one hand, investors will be confident that fiscal deficit has come down. On the other hand, people will be happy because more investment, more jobs, more employment, and more growth. So this is a win-win situation. And what has happened on the other hand, you should have revenue also. No? So what has government done on the revenue side? It has given a lot of SOPs, that is a lot of benefits for individuals and MSMEs because of pandemic. We were not able to earn a lot of money. Revenue came down. So what happened? Individuals and MSMEs were taxed. So what it has done is the government has realized that the pandemic related slowdown is over and slowly growth will pick up. So now it has given tax benefits for individuals and MSMEs. We saw, right, if your income is less than 7 lakhs, you don't have to pay tax. So we have come to that level. And also disinvestment and non-tax revenues are there. Disinvestment, what they'll do, they'll sell PSUs. They have reduced the target to 50,000 crores. And non-tax revenues, how this RBI will give to the government. So 48,000 crore to the government RBI will give, and 50,000 disinvestment target of PSUs. So all these things. So on first three areas, what we have seen fiscal deficit, how to maintain it, fiscal consolidation, how to do it. Second, once we do fiscal consolidation, where we should focus, capital expenditure, so on and so forth. And third, to do all these things, you need revenue, right? So there are tax revenues and non-tax revenues, disinvestment. Through these also you get revenue. So these areas they are talking about. So the author is telling everything is going on well only because you've reduced right, Indian middle class is the most taxed in the world. So you have reduced the tax, that is good. So these things are telling, but on the other hand, you are telling, the author is telling, don't think if you reduce the tax, it will directly convert into consumption because inflation is high. So even if people consume, it will not help the economy. So that small caveat he keeps there, but he's saying overall, okay, you have reduced the tax for individuals and MSMEs. And disinvestment and non-tax revenue, we've seen this is also most likely they'll achieve. So what finally he's telling, so if you do all this, you focus on social sector, you give last mile connectivity, self-help groups, you form a lot of self-help groups because women will be benefited. You help cooperatives so that people in agriculture and dairy sector, they'll be benefited. So you focus on these areas so that if the rural areas are good, if they are doing fine, then urban areas will automatically be fine. Next is telling you give push to new things. For example, tax regime is there, you change to new tax. So far you are using fossil fuel, from now on you use hydrogen fuel. For that you give push. From traditional agriculture to digital agriculture, like that we need changes in everything. So the transition should happen. So this author is telling you should give push for the transition from old to new. Where are the new areas? New tax regime, new fuel methods, that is the hydrogen fuel, digital agriculture, so on and so forth. So he's telling you should give focus. There should be impetus to these areas, like that he's telling. So these are the 5 areas the author is telling the government should focus. And way forward, what he's telling, capital expenditure should lead to household disposable income, because only if there is disposable income you will be able to spend, right? What is disposable income? The money that you have after paying tax, that is disposable income. So that area we should focus, and this is very important. What is improved balance sheet? Have you heard of something called as twin balance sheet syndrome? So when banks and private companies, both their balance sheets are affected, it is called twin balance sheet syndrome. So the government should also focus on these areas. That is, it should improve the financial health of banks as well as the companies. So that is there. And next thing is telling create demand for goods and services. So that is also very important, right? Creating demand for goods and services, only then there will be consumption and related growth in the country. So you focus on these things, and once if you improve balance sheet, what will happen? Banks will be good, and private companies will also be good. So if private companies are good, what will happen? Private investment cycle will improve, and this in turn will generate more jobs. So what the author is telling, in India we have close to 60% multidimensionally poor people and 18% vulnerable people who might any time fall into the multidimensionally poor groups. So we should bring in schemes to target these people, only then we can truly call this sabka vikas. Like that is telling. I hope you understood this, right? So 5 areas, what is happening and what should be the way forward. So this is what the author is talking about. Let us now move on to the next topic. The next topic is about the author is telling, see, you're talking about growth, but there is no growth. It is only coming down. The growth is only coming down. There is no upward growth. There is only downward growth. So in this we'll see what are the areas that the author is talking about, and he's telling why there is no growth. So the why is in news? Because experts feel that there is deceleration and growth of Indian economy, and it is not as what the finance minister is telling. So that is why this is in the news. So, and the author is telling, so this is not a new phenomena. This started before itself. He's telling this started in 2000, in the year 2000s itself, because what happened in 2000s, the average annual GDP was 5 to 6%, which was 7 to 8% in the previous decade. That is, in 2000s it was 7 to 8%, and by 2010s it had come down to 5 to 6% because economy started decelerating in 2000s itself. And the author tells, if you go by correct estimates with what the international institutes and all tell, it is not even 5 to 6%, it is 4 5%. So he's telling the Indian growth story, it is not as fast or as quick as it is seen. In fact, it is very slow. It is telling it could be only 4 to 5%. So why this has happened? So the author is giving few reasons. So let us see why this happened. He's telling India deindustrialized prematurely. So you know the growth of China, right? What they did, agriculture, industries, and then services. So here is telling India deindustrialized at a much earlier pace. That is, it prematurely deindustrialized. So when did this happen? It happened in 2010 itself, because we started focusing more on service sector, and there are a lot of other issues associated with industrialization, right? You need a skilled workforce, you need environmental clearances, you need state of the art technology devices, so on and so forth. So India deindustrialized prematurely. So, and then because of that, what happened? So growth rate, which was 13.1%, it had gone down to negative 2.4% in 2019. And because of that, what happened? Fixed investment rates, investment started falling. And what happened later? Domestic saving rates, they also started falling. So what has happened? Growth rates are going down, investment rates are going down, domestic saving rates also went down. So because of why all these things happen? Because of premature deindustrialization only. So what the finance minister has done, she is talking about the role of infrastructure and public investment. So she emphasizes the role of infrastructure and public investment. This is a good thing. Why? Because they crowd in investment. So what do you understand from this? You might have heard about crowd in and crowd out, right? So crowd out is uh, investors and private players going away from the borrowing scene. Crowd in means they will also come in and play a role. So that the government has talked about, and it is going to do it. So what the budget is doing, infrastructure 3.3% it is going to focus on infrastructure and public investment. We saw that in the previous slide, right? So 3.3% of the GDP, it will now be focusing only on infrastructure and public investment. And with whatever grant in aids that we give to the state, this will come around to 4.5% of the Indian GDP. So this is a good thing. But what we have seen is all this infrastructure spending and all in poorer states, they're not doing well. Even if you give a 50-year tenure for infrastructure, these poor states are not doing well. So if you want to see real growth while you spend for infrastructure and public investment, you should make sure these these poor states also do well. So let us see the other areas where they are focusing. Capex on railways, that is expenditure on railways. How much they are going to spend? 2.40 lakh, that is 2.40 lakhs, 2 lakh 40 crores they are going to spend, which is 9 times more than what they spent on 2014. So 2.40 lakhs crore. But the thing is, they're telling, the experts are telling they're not aware of the nature of expenditure, whether they're going to spend on beautifying the stations or if they're going to spend on relaying tracks and things like that. If they relay tracks, what will happen? Efficiency will improve. If efficiency improves, productivity will improve. Because of that, you will get more revenue, right? But so far we do not know if they are going to just beautify stations. If you beautify stations, the return on investment will not be much more. So but anyways, they are going to spend 2.40 lakh crores on railways. And next thing is infrastructure development in agriculture industry. This is also a good thing. But what we get to know is share in gross fixed capital formation. You know what is gross fixed capital formation? That is investment. Whatever that you save, it again goes into the economy as investment, right? So that as a proportion to GDP has declined. So over the years, we are not investing back in the economy. So this is what the data says. So this is about infrastructure and public investment. Next, one important issue the author talks about is import dependence on China. What is happening? Because of premature deindustrialization, we are depending on China. So because of import dependence on China, what did we do? We brought in something called as Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. But what has happened is over the years, they were not able to do anything about import dependence. We are still dependent on China only. So he's telling Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. What is Atmanirbhar Bharat? Self-reliant India. But we are not self-reliant. We are dependent on China for imports. Why? Because premature deindustrialization. We are not creating our own tools, kits, and things like that. So because of that, what has happened? From 57.4 billion, this itself is very huge. From that, we have gone to 64.5 billion trade deficit. So here there is problem, and you might have all heard of something called as production linked incentive scheme. So it was launched in 2021, but so far there is no assessment on them. We do not know what has happened so far. And there's something called phase manufacturing program in the mobile phone industry. In that they are manufacturing mobiles and they are exporting. But what we do not understand is the kits that they are having, no, that they are using for mobile parts, no, that they are importing only. Particularly, they are importing it from China. So the author is telling, so domestic value addition is minimal only because all the parts you are buying from foreign country only, that you are assembling and exporting. So because of that, there is no real value addition. Like that is telling, and is giving an example also. So production of components, there is no infrastructure for them, and you have sub assemblies, assembly structure where you develop all these tools and kits, right? So he's telling there are no improvements in these areas. And the next thing the government is telling, bank credit growth has improved a lot, because after pandemic, growth is ticking up and people or industries, MSMEs, they are buying from the bank, and the bank also giving loans. Like that the government is telling. But the author is telling this credit growth is due to personal loans. Personal loan means I am buying a personal loan to build a house, to buy cars and things like that. This will not translate into public investment, right? So he's telling, the government is telling, bank credit growth has increased, but it has increased for what? For personal loans only. People are just buying cars and bikes. That will not do anything for the economy, right? Of course they'll do things for economy, but the impact will not be very huge. So what the government did to boost private long-term investment, the government came up with something called as National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development. but we do not know what has happened to it so far. So there is no progress in boosting industrial and infrastructure development. So when this came, it was publicized amidst much fanfare, but the author is telling there is no progress, like that is telling. But he's giving, but he's telling these are the areas we are lagging. If we focus on, we can do good. But there's nothing to celebrate in the budget, because what is telling, because the budget is not focusing on main areas. What are the main areas? Decade long growth has gone down. The past decade growth has gone down. The budget has not taken stock of it. There is fall in investment and fall in savings rate. The government has not talked anything about it. There is premature industrialization also, which the government has not talked about. So it's telling this budget fails because it does not talk about these four areas. So I hope you understood this article. So here he talks about premature deindustrialization and how public expenditure on infrastructure has improved. Next, he talks about railways, how railways can be a good role player, but we do not know where the investment has gone. And he talks about how trade deficit with China is improving, and there are a lot of landmark schemes, but so far they haven't done anything, or there are no assessments to see what is being done. So this is what the author is talking. So I hope you understood this. Let us move on to the next topic. So we have come to the last topic for the day. So this topic is very important because so far you might have heard of terms like judicial activism, judicial overreach, and things like that. But here we have a very peculiar term, or rather, I would say a very new term, which is judicial majoritarianism. What is judicial majoritarianism? So I'll give you a simple brief into it. So let's say there's a 5 judge bench. What they'll do is, let's say they are for an issue and against an issue. So for an issue, 3 judges; against an issue, 2 judges. So what will happen is the judgment will be in favor of these 3 people who have given the verdict. So whatever these 3 people are telling, that only will become the verdict. So this article is talking about if this is right, can we do this? This is how is it supposed to be, or can we improve the system? Because what these 2 judges are telling, even that might be true, right? Just because 3 people are in favor of something, that doesn't mean that is exclusively right. So what do we do in these cases? And we'll see historically what are the cases that we went through and what happened because of judicial majoritarianism. These things we'll see. Okay. So why is this in news? Because recently, due to demonetization, whatever happened with RBI and the central government, so the majority judges went in favor of RBI and union government, but few judges wrote their dissent notes, and in that, Justice J. Nagaratna, decision is hailed as a challenge to RBI's institutional acquiescence to central government. So this judgment, it has questioned why we should always go for the majority judgment. This minority judgment is also right only, no? Even this judge has got a point. But why are we only accepting what the majority is telling? Like that, people have started questioning. So this whole thing is in news because we are now questioning the disregard for minority decisions. So what is judicial majoritarianism? Where does it come from? First, I'll tell you. Generally, you have something called as divisional benches where 2 judges sit, and they're not very constitutionally very important matter. So when it comes to constitutional benches, what will happen is 5, 7, 9, 11, 13 judges will sit. So how is this possible? This is possible through Article 145(3). So this majority requirement, where does it come from? It comes from Article 145(5). So what has happened is, generally if the parliament passes a law, we question it, right? We criticize it. Why we are criticizing? Because you just have simple majority, and the simple majority can go wrong, right? So we question it, criticize it. So the same thing should apply to judiciary, right? But we are not seeing those things when it comes to judiciary. So Jeremy Walderson, he says the concept of majoritism, he has talked about majoritarianism, Jeremy Waldron. So he's telling, why did we accept majoritarianism? Because there is efficiency through ease of decision making, because simple majority, 3:2, 3 people, okay, efficiency. Next, they are telling epistemic objectivity through majority adherence, and finally they're telling equality through fairness. So Because of these three things, generally people go for majoritarianism. But what this author is telling is, legislature and MLAs, MPs, they can act on popular perception, but judges cannot do it, right? So we cannot go with the head counts when judges and when the matter is of justice, we cannot go on head count. So he's telling judges cannot do this. MPs and MLAs can do, but judges cannot do it. He's telling how these judgments are given. They are given based on methodology or logic of interpretation. So Jerome Frank says, how do you come about this? He is telling something called as judicial hunches. So what is judicial hunches? There is hunch, intuition. How do you get this? He's telling you get it due to subjective experiences, that is individual experiences, which may vary from person to person, outlook, perceptions about life, prejudices about life, and biases that you might have in your life. So he's telling these judicial hunches are very subjective in nature, and MPs and MLAs might do it, but judges cannot do it because the idea of justice is at stake here. So he's telling you cannot go with head counts. So he's telling, see, even this minority decision, let's say it's 3:2 or 4:1. This one person, he might have gone through a lot of literature, evidences, and he might have also come into certain conclusions, right? So you should take all those things into consideration, like that the author is telling. Why these minority decisions are important? Because minority decisions have historically they have been very very important. Justice H.R. Khanna's decision in ADM Jabalpur case. So right to life and expression during constitutional crisis, do they apply or do they not apply? So everybody said they do not apply, but only Justice H.R. Khanna said it applies. So during constitutional crisis times, right to life and expression, it applies. Like that only HR Khanna said, but it was a minority decision, right? But now we have accepted the minority decision only. Secondly, Justice Subbarao in the Karak Singh versus State of UP case, he upheld the right to privacy. But earlier, right to privacy was not a fundamental right. But here, Justice Subbarao, he was the minority judge, and he gave it in favor of upholding right to privacy, which now we have with Puttaswamy case Puttaswamy case. We are telling fundamental right to privacy is a fundamental right, right? That what in 1962 itself, it was given as a minority decision. So the author is telling you give weightage to minority decisions only because only they have been historical. So and there are other instances, other cases also which are quite scary. So the author tells during emergency the rate of dissent was low. That is, people are scared of their political masters and they are not dissenting. But after in the 80s, after the emergency went off, rate of dissent went up. So the circumstances also play a role. So you cannot tell majority decision is only right. So you can implement that like that. You cannot say. You should also take into consideration the minority judgment. And one more, important thing: when Chief Justice is sitting, rate of dissent is low. That is, other judges are not dissenting with the Chief Justice because the Chief Justice is very powerful. He is the, master of the roster, and he should only recommend a lot of things and things like that. So when the Chief Justice is not there, dissent is high. So if the Chief Justice is a part of the bench, the dissent is low. So this is all these things are playing an important role. It's not just methodology, interpretation. So if these things are playing a role, obviously justice will be affected, right? So there's this person called Ronald Dworkin. What is telling? Give more weightage to senior judges' opinions. See, right now we can tell this only, but we can come with more alternatives if you accept the fact that there are some flaws. I mean, there are major flaws with the judicial majoritarianism. Once you accept this, we can sit and think about more alternatives. Right now he's telling you do not go with judicial majoritarianism. You go with something called as, if there are senior judges and junior judges, you give more weightage to senior judges because they'll have more experience. They might have come across various cases like that. So right now he's saying I could think of only this only, but right now what you should do is you should sit and accept the fact that there are problems with judicial majoritarianism. So this is a very important concept you all should know, judicial majoritarianism. I hope you understood what judicial majoritarianism is, and these two cases are very important. Also keep in mind these are all very important. So we have come to the final part of the discussion. So prelims practice question: consider the following statement with regards to particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So Odisha has the highest number of PVTGs in India. Is it right? Yeah, it's right. There are no PVTGs in Punjab. There are no PVTGs in Punjab. So which are true? Both 1 and 2 are true. So let us see the next question. Consider the following statement with respect to Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act. It is not available to male members. Yes, it is not available to male members. The Supreme Court recently said aggrieved male members can also file recourse under this law. No, this is wrong. In fact, the Delhi High Court itself said, male members cannot seek recourse under this law. So which of the following statements are true? Only one is true. Second is wrong. Let us go to the mains practice question. The question is, of late there are a lot of cases of national importance that are lined up before constitutional benches for hearing. In this light, explain what judicial majoritarianism is and how it plays a role in travesty of justice. So you start the answer by telling what judicial majoritarianism is, and you give examples of. I gave you two examples, right? So you talk about it. You talk about the role of chief justice, role of circumstances, and how it leads to travesty of justice. So with examples you talk about all these things, yeah, and you talk about in which articles mostly they come about. So mostly they are in article 145, right? So you should quote article 145 and try to explain this answer. So you might expect this question in this year main. So go through that article once again for you to have better understanding. So that's all for the day. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you understood all these 5 topics. If you like our work, you can like, comment, and subscribe and share also. You can also follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Telegram, and Facebook. That's all for the day. Have a nice day. Thank you.